Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello, welcome to the Daily Palace podcast, brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. Apologies for the delay in getting this out to you. We're operating a slightly reduced staff this week, and we're Brits, so that means delays. Consider this podcast your replacement bus service. Today, we're going to give our thoughts on Palace's 1-1 draw with the Toon on Saturday, before briefly previewing the match against Ipswich, which kicks off tonight. So, at Selhurst last weekend, Palace drew 1-1 with Newcastle. Newcastle took the lead around half-time with a own goal from Mark Gahey, before Palace equalised in the 94th minute with a bullet header from Daniel Muñoz. 1-1, a deserved result, in your opinion, Dan? Also, I didn't introduce you today, Dan. With me today is Dan.
Where's the introduction? Come on, I'm sitting here patiently waiting for your...
I'm raring to go. Yeah, sorry, Dan. How are you, Dan? Firstly, before I barrage your questions.
But yeah, as you sort of asked me, the draw was, I don't think... Well, we got away with a draw because we could have been 4 or 5 up. We missed, I think, several sitters, like almost point blank range. The stats would tell you that we were totally dominant across sort of pretty much all of it, really. And, well, even to the stats to the point where I don't think actually Newcastle had a shot, even a shot on goal, and they still managed to get a goal. I had to think about that for a while. I went, oh, yeah, it was an own goal, wasn't it? So that doesn't count as a shot for them.
Yeah,
but it was a very marked improvement. We were just totally dominant across the pitch. Even reading all the comments on the YouTube, the highlights, and on the Beeb, basically going, we should have won that quite handsomely, and Newcastle kind of got really lucky there. So, just slightly annoyed, but we walked away with a point at the very least. But we should have really won that one.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's a draw is the absolute least that Palace deserved. I believe that was only the 8th time ever that a team has not lost a game where they didn't muster a shot. And that last game of that sort was 2 seasons ago now. Very Palace for that to happen against you, isn't it? But I think they were definitely a stronger team on the day. And pleasingly, the 2 things which Glasner spoke about pre-match, which were condensing the space between the lines, get everyone playing closer together, and relatedly playing the ball with more speed, moving it between the lines, between the players with more speed, countering more directly, hitting teams before defensively organised. They were both on display in this game, I think. You saw with particularly that chance that Munoz has that he really should score in just about the first half. What comes to him on his left foot and he kind of shanks it and then starts beating his fists on the turf in fury. That was such a lovely flying move. Condensed space brilliantly. Newcastle found it really hard to play through. So I think it was a really strong performance from Palace. It's just very it's a great symbol of how things have been this season for the club, that they play great, create tons of good chances. Newcastle literally don't get a shot off, and Palace don't win. It's sort of sums it all up, doesn't it? But nevertheless, I think there's plenty to be encouraged by there. On that point, things to be encouraged by. Do any players stand out for you as playing particularly well from Palace point of view? Or, as I always like to give you the opportunity to have a moan if you like, did anyone stand out as playing really badly in the Palace team for you, Dan?
Oh, I don't think none of them particularly played badly, but once we actually played as a unit, we didn't make any silly little mistakes or any through ball or as said unforced errors. We just we conceded a goal through a bit of sort of tight passing and tight sort of thing movement in the box, and it kind of ricocheted off Gahey at point blank range. There's nothing much he could do about that. I was just more thinking of the lead up to the goal with the free kick. If you watch the highlight at the very far end of where all the players are, I think it's Lerma. Lerma gets pushed as it happens. I'm not sure which Newcastle player it is, but he gets pushed over like a kid on a playground, just full shove. And the referee is right there, and there is no whistle, no VAR, no nothing. And I was sort of watching that in sheer disbelief, thinking, if this was Man United, Arsenal, or City, there would be a national inquiry over this of why the referee wasn't blown. It'd be talked about in Parliament, but no, Palace just carry on. It's a goal. But going back to the point of the team, I think we played really well. We played well as a team. It was just the finishing. We finished that. We've been away at the races, completely and utterly no problem whatsoever. It was just a lot of sitters that just felt perfectly. Any other sort of world-class centre forward would put those in every day of the week, and we're getting. I think Mateta tried a turnaround left foot shot. Muñoz literally hits it with his heel as he comes across him. They did everything that could have gone wrong, but it's just also encouraging. We were getting balls low into the box instead of trying to screen them from 30 yards out and work it in. So it's all a marked improvement. This is the kind of thing I basically want from Palace, to be playing like that.
Yeah, it's sort of the best problem you can possibly have as a team, isn't it? Is not finishing your chances. I mean, obviously, it can get to a point where it is a real problem, and it kind of has been for Palace. But if you're defending well, creating loads of chances, finishing is often, there are some players who are really great at it and some players who are really bad at it. But then most players are somewhere in the middle, and it's kind of a question of confidence, form, just which way the wind's blowing basically that day. And you think if you can keep defending well, keep generating high quality chances, Palace will be picking up points and playing all right. When another day lows go in, the chances like that Munoz one, and Sarr had a good one as well, didn't he? That he sort of does well to bring down, and then he could do better the finish, but it's also a really good save from Nick Pope, who Sarr's clearly expecting is going to sprawl right down at his feet, and he kind of suddenly stops his run and stays up strong, a bit like Martinez in the World Cup final. Remember that one, Emmy, when he was Kolo Muani, I want to say, bearing down on him? Bit in that style. Not quite as spectacular, but a very good save from Nick Pope. The player I wanted to highlight was a guy you highlighted being pushed over the build-up there. I was really impressed with Jefferson Lerma in the game. He hasn't started a match for over a month, and he came back in like he'd just been being kind of wound up in a room for all that time. He was so aggressive and energetic. 4 tackles, 3 interceptions are kind of can say numbers, really broke up the play well, but also sort of tone setter in terms of just will to win. The way so that Munoz chance that we keep coming back to, that he should score in the first half, is started by a situation where Lerma just sort of mauls poor old little Lewis Hall. This kind of Newcastle corner, ball falls to Hall on the edge of the box, and Lerma just sprints at him and sort of intent to pull him down, but I think Lewis Hall almost hits the deck out of just shock, surprise and fear at the pace that was coming at him, and then he plays a nice ball which starts this move, and really tidy in possession as well. I think he deserves, even though he did concede the free kick which led to the Newcastle goal, I think he deserves a lot of credit for the way that he came back into the side. I think we'll take a pause now to have a word from the sponsor before continuing our discussion of that Newcastle draw. Here at Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs. It's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. So we've touched on this already, Dan, but one of the key narratives that's come out of the match was that Newcastle avoided defeat despite not having a shot. What I want to ask you is, how encouraged should we be by that Palace defensive performance? Is it the Palace defence? Is it Newcastle's misfiring attack? Are there big positives we can take forward into the coming games from that?
I would probably put it down to a bit of both. It's just one of those days where sort of Palace have now they wanted to get a result out of that and they saw that as an opportunity. And you had Newcastle that weren't really on their A game because we know that they can be quite deadly when they need to. They were also missing Isaac as well, so they didn't have their full force, which we could have got away with. But I think it was just very much that the Palace have now gotten a bit more used to each other. They've started to gel a bit more as a team, especially in the defence. As I brought up earlier, we didn't concede by a unforced error or a through ball that nobody saw coming, or getting a little bit caught offline or caught too high or whatever. It was just a sort of semi-well worked free kick that kind of grazed across the front of the goal, and it could have gone anywhere. It's one of those Sunday League balls that any could go absolutely anywhere. It just happened to hit Gahey and go in the back of the net. But I don't say you got too many complaints from it. It was a marked improvement from the last couple of games. I think probably played better than we did against at Newcastle. We played better against Newcastle than we did against Spurs, and we got the win there. Probably even played better against Newcastle against Villa, and we only just managed to squeak a 2-2 draw out of it. So it's encouraging. It's just now putting the ball in the back of the net a little bit more consistent, and to kind of not give up it's still very much not to give up easy goals like that, but you can't really predict them, especially with the fixture list we've got coming up over the next 3 weeks. A very nasty, nasty fixture list before Christmas. So,
I think you're spot on to that kind of. It's an unfortunate one. That free kick is really well worked, to be fair, from Newcastle, and maybe someone can pick up on what they're doing, pick up the run from Gordon a bit quicker, but it's smart and
yeah.
Once he's there, I think you're right that flashes it across a goal with pace. There's a good chance it's going in. It's just going to bundle off someone. And I think to limit Newcastle to no shots other than that is really impressive, because you could play it down. Newcastle were the lowest scoring team in the top half going into this game, so they haven't been firing all cylinders. That said, their issue is more finishing than creating chances. I think they've got one of the biggest XG underperformances in the league. When we were talking on the crossover with Ian last Thursday, that was kind of the point that he was driving home, was it's about the likes of Isak and stuff just not really finding the form they had last season and making poor decisions when it gets into the box. Whereas Palace didn't give them a chance to get into a position to fluff their lines or make a poor decision in that game. I think part of that was about just the structure, like Glass was talking about, being close together, being more organised. Part of it was also defending with the ball better. I think Palace were tidier in possession, coped with the press better. The sort of loose balls that have been a feature of Palace's defensive frailties this season, where someone kind of plays a ball to no one in the middle of the park, and then there's a fast break where they just rip through the middle and score. There was none of that in this game. I think they were much, much tidier. And yeah, I think it was really very encouraging. Newcastle, despite their lack of goals and not a team that particularly struggled to create chances most weeks, it is more of an issue of finishing. So to limit them, to suffocate them like Palace did in that game is really, really positive, I would say. Daniel Munoz in the Palace defence-ish scored what was, I think, actually his first goal for Palace, which I was surprised by, but given how many scores for Colombia, I think that was actually his first.
I was told it was his first goal in English football.
No, I suppose it will be. I don't remember him playing for Accrington at any point. But so did that again atone for that City miss in the first half. Did you feel in this game a sense that his season was finally starting in earnest, really firing up, Dan? Or how did you feel about Muñoz today?
Well, I don't know if his season's starting to fire up, but I think it's definitely a boost of confidence per se, because he hasn't had sort of the greatest start of the season. He has been highlighted once or twice on this podcast for being out of position, or a through ball's gone past him or something like that, and a couple of very weird things have happened to him while playing for Colombia as well. But I think it'll be definitely a boost of confidence, one, to get the first goal off, and also just have a really, really good game as well. Like, he was bombing up and down that wing constantly. He kept turning up on the left side, right side. He basically was having one of those games where it's like, I want to do something spectacular here. I was on it, and he just was determined to do something. So it would be a boost of confidence for him. I don't know about his season off and running, but because he's in one of those kind of slightly thankless positions as a sort of a wing back come fullback that they don't get a lot of glory. But when he take this one as take the glory while it happens, and then just carry on. Basically, don't do anything stupid, and just keep plugging away. It'll start to come good. It can only just get better. That's all I can say. But definitely. No, I think you're right. It's obviously realistically too early to say let's kickstart the season when we've not had another game since that. But I think he was pretty awesome in this match. He made 11 tackles, which is really insanely high. Shut down that left side. Yeah, was so energetic and so, again, on that qualitative sort of intangible level, you could just see an intensity and drive in him that maybe you saw a bit at the end of last season and didn't see so much. This one looked a little bit leggy and tired at times. Best epitomised by when he misses that chance. He's hammering on the turf like Tim Chalamet trying to summon a sandworm in June or something. He's furious, and he kind of brought that. I think he brought that anger and intensity through to the rest of his performance and got rewarded deservedly with the goal to level it. I think he was awesome this game, and hopefully we see a bit more than Munoz last season. You can't forget the celebration for the goal as well. That was pretty.
It was pretty
intense. That was like I have the ruler of all lives to obey. Come on, Ken.
Well, that's a good segue there, Dan, because what I was just about to ask about is to wrap up our discussion. How would you assess what the sort of vibe is around the team at this present moment? Specifically, is there a significance that can be read into Glasner's Kloppite celebration, where he sprints down to get right in the throng with the players, or is that should we not read too much into that? Is it an encouraging sign?
Oh, it's definitely an encouraging sign. Palace fans totally resonate with managers and stuff that get into it. We love the guys that just go for it as much as we do, because we are mad. So you've been around us the last couple of months now. So,
I've never seen you celebrate in that time.
Yeah, we like the guys that celebrate it. We like the ones that sort of bleed the red and blue. So it's not like the the top end of the world. They'll just change managers, whatever. We pay attention to them, and then you'll become part of the family. So he's starting to get it, and I think the fans are going to start to sort of resonate as well. Sort of when you start getting a song about you and things like that, and they start sort of listing you off as some of the best managers or the best players, then you're in for life.
Yeah, I think the also encouraging it's not just the fans, the players look quite happy to have them in those celebrations. Admittedly, they're on cloud nine, so take anything, but yeah, they don't look like people who've been assaulted by their boss when he jumps in. They seem like they're really happy to share in the joy with him. So I think that's really encouraging. As you say, resonates with the fans. But of course, as the sacking of the likes of Patrick Vieira has shown, Steve Parish, if he thinks the results aren't good enough, won't be perturbed by the manager being popular with the dressing room and with the terraces. If he thinks it's right to bring Roy Hodgson or similar back in, he'll do it regardless. So
business is business, essentially. Yeah, yeah. You're not getting anywhere, right? Out the door, right? Yeah. Get the boxes. You're at your desk.
Exactly. But I think nevertheless an encouraging sign. And on that, we will take a pause for a word from the network and jump into our little Ipswich preview.
This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network, every club, every day.
So after years of being presumably warded away successfully by scarecrows, the Eagles return to Portman Road to terrorise the Tractor Boys tonight. Both teams are on 9 points. It's 17th versus 19th. With City, Brighton, Arsenal and Arsenal again next on Palace's fixture ticker. Is this a must-win game for you, Dan?
It's definitely feeling like one of those weird 6-pointers, especially with that the next 3 weeks we've got coming up is probably out of them is I wouldn't say guaranteed, but the most likely we could get some points off unless City start to get even worse. But that's a story to have with the City lads in a couple of days, which is going to be fun. But it's definitely, starting to feel like a must-win, which is very weird to me. Have that kind of attitude before Christmas, but this is like what the modern Prem has become. Of every single point matters, and getting like Arsenal fans and mates of mine that are bemoaning missing the title last season because they drew against one. It's more than that, but it's as I say, definitely a must or feels like a must win. But still, if we can get points off of it, I'll be cool with it, because it's it keeps saying that this December fixture list is going to be a real slog and a real endurance test. So if we can get points off of them, cool. Because Ipswich have taken a couple of decent scalps as well, so they're not going to be pushovers. They play fairly physically. They've got a lot of players that have come down from sort of the top six, either on loan or just as the way that the transfers work. So they're not going to lie down and let us take this. And we've got to keep going on the high that we got from the Newcastle game. It was a marked improvement, so it's keep that momentum going and see if we'll get something before we start playing these the big teams again.
Yeah, I agree. I think a draw is fine. A loss would sting. It may or may not be a 6-pointer. I sort of think, realistically, it's a bit arrogant to say it isn't, because Ipswich have given a good account of themselves, been in good form and had a very similar season to Palace, hence a similar position. So similar, in fact, that both of them have only beaten Spurs this season, which made me laugh when I realised it going in. But
is that true? They've only beaten Spurs.
Yeah, both teams are only beaten Spurs. It's a bit of a laugh.
Oh my god!
But so I would be a bit arrogant to say they're not in a similar position to Palace. That said, I think if Palace are in the mire for relegation at the end of the year, I feel it's more likely it'll be battling for sort of 18th with, and I mean, it could be Ipswich and a Leicester. It could easily also be like a Wolves, a Southampton, not Southampton, sorry, Southampton will be gone by then, I think. A Wolves, a Everton, one of those teams that, sort of similarly a bit flawed, similar level of experience and depth. And I could realistically, I would say it's more likely that Ipswich do gradually start to slip out of the race just due to lack of depth and experience, even though I think they're a well-coached, good side. But why I do think a win would be a big help is, or a point, a draw will be fine. I think if Palace go into City, Brighton, Arsenal with a good mindset and confidence, they can actually get points in those games. Palace have had a knack of getting, certainly against City and Arsenal, not as much against Brighton, but a knack of getting results against, against sort of better performing teams in the league. And so if they go in a positive vibe, it could be a chance to pick up some more points and not be completely bruised by the tough run. But yeah, I don't think we should be billing it as a must win. I think it's helpful this stage, and realistically, 13, 14 games into a season, no game is a must win unless you're vying for the title. So I think it's probably temper our anxiety a little bit. Are there any players in the Ipswich side that you worry about from a Palace point of view, or conversely, are there any Palace players that you think will fancy this game, be up for it, and can hurt Ipswich?
For the Palace side, I think like Mateta and Eze will probably be up for it. They'll want to start getting some goals in and some good performances, especially Mateta. He started to get a couple of good goals and he's been snatching at them at the last one or two games. He's been in some good positions. Just he's like kind of either whiffed it or just been massively out of control of it and just tried to do too much. So I think he'll be up for it, especially with a team like Ipswich, which we should be fairly okay with, should be fairly confident against. But on the Ipswich side, I think Liam Delap might be quite interesting, especially as he's sort of the ex-Man City graduate. So he's been on sort of a couple of these up-and-coming players that I don't know if he's on loan or they transferred him out. I'm not sure. But he could be quite a threat. I was going to say Harris, but he's still out injured. So he would have been the obvious choice. But he's out injured, and I think I've got 3 or 4 of their sort of somewhat regular starters out injured as well. So they're in kind of the same boat as we are when it comes to injury issues. So that will probably be what the key players for me that I'll be looking out for. And I think Gahey will want to try and get a decent performance as well, especially as he did put in an own goal. It wasn't exactly his fault, but I think he'll try and go, we don't want to make this the story of this week. We want to try and put in a good performance. So, yeah, I think that those will be the ones I'll be looking out for. I will have to admit, I do not know the Ipswich team that well. So
I think you're right with Liam Delap's been the big danger man this season, hasn't he? I kind of think I'm semi-confident if Palace don't try and play the line too high, too aggressively, and even if they do, I think the back three are quite well adapted to dealing with Liam Delap because his big super strength is that he's really fast and athletic. And I think between the three of Gahey, Chalobah, and particularly the Kwa, they can kind of handle that. That's what they're one of the things they're well adapted to doing. I mean, I really think they're developing into a really, really well-rounded, excellent defensive unit who, as long as they've got the support from the midfield in front of them and they're not left completely exposed, would fancy dealing with quite a lot of strikers in the league. And I think Liam Delap definitely falls into that category, but nevertheless, he's finding positions, he's scoring goals, and we've always got to be slightly worried by that. Leif Davis, an interesting one at left back. He's created 9 big chances, which is more than any other defender in the league. That said, if he does go up a lot, as you kind of expect him to, and Ipswich are still going for their first home win of the season, I believe, and I think they'll be pushing and trying to play a bit aggressive. It leaves a lot of room, which he will not have the pace to get back and cover, for Ismaila Sarr, who's one of the form players for Palace. So I think that'll be an interesting battle if Ismaila Sarr's still got the energy in his legs after 2 long run-outs and still in form like he's been the last couple of games. He could have a good game. So also Ipswich, Sam Morsy is a very tidy midfielder, and I think if Palace can lock him down, it makes it quite difficult for Ipswich to play out, because their other sort of exceptional player in that department of passing the ball through the midfield, if he's not had his confidence completely ruined by his time with Pep, it's Calvin Phillips, and he's injured for the game. So I think if Palace can lock Morsy down, that would nullify Ipswich to a significant extent. However, he's quite good under pressure. He seems to slip out of presses quite nicely, so they've got to be a bit careful about how they do that. That'll be an interesting dynamic. But overall, what are your predictions, Dan? How do you see this one going?
I would probably go.
I've lost you, mate.
Sorry, I left it on mute. I muted myself. I was going to go for
we'll never know. That's what we've got time for today.
Yeah, I was going to go 2-1 Palace, mainly off of the sort of the basis of the performance against Newcastle. We were a lot better going forward. We made a lot more sort of high percentage chances, I think you'd probably say. And defensively, we were considerably better than we usually are. So and everybody's going to be on that high sort of from that game. So I'm fairly confident with a 2-1. It's not going to be probably as cruisy as it could have been against Newcastle, but I'm fairly confident on that. Ipswich are going to make it difficult for us because they're a team essentially fighting for their survival from game to game. So, just going to make it physical. They're going to be very difficult to play through. And so that would be my probably initial sort of predictions. But at the moment, I haven't exactly got the greatest track record. So
I also don't have the greatest track record and have also put 2-1 to Palace. I think Ipswich will be in the mood to have a really good crack at it. They've not got such an unforgiving run as Palace afterwards, so I think the thought of losing the game won't bother them as much, and they really want a first home win. We'll see it as a good opportunity. I think they'll go for it, and I think that means Palace will have great opportunities to win the game, so counterintuitively, because Ipswich, most defensively vulnerable in transition on the counter, struggling basically against, I think, sort of fitter, more experienced Prem teams to get back into shape quickly enough, pick up the kind of crazy runs and unorthodox positions people take up. And Palace have been at their best in recent weeks when they're flowing, putting together intricate, clever counter-attacking moves. And so I think they're well set up to play against Ipswich tactically and temperamentally in this moment. So I'm optimistic. I think a 2-1 Palace win. I think it'll be a good game. I think both teams will play with a lot of heart and yeah, I think it'll be a nice one to watch. But on that, we'll find out in sort of less than an hour.
About an hour till kickoff. So
yeah,
as of recording.
Thanks for joining me today, Dan.
No worries, always a pleasure.
And thank you for listening. Give us 5 stars if you've listened and enjoyed until this point. We'll be back tomorrow to lament our poor predictions and analyse Palace's 2-0 defeat at Portman Road.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.